Welcome to Do What Matters Most. This is episode 13 in the series, Parent Leadership for 21st Century Children. As parents, we adapt to our children as they mature so we can provide the conditions that will help them avoid the pitfalls or threats to their growth. This works best when you communicate to your children that you understand each one of them in a unique manner, and at the same time make your family the primary point of reference for your children. Visit mattersmostmedia.org to find more about the podcast and firstanswers.com to find tons of parenting resources.
If you're wondering why I am describing parent leadership as a form of parenting that adapts to children of different ages and to individual children, it's because quite often we work really hard to just learn how to deal with children of one age. Then they seem to grow older and we have to make one adjustment after another. The goal or the objective is to get just a little bit ahead of them so that we lead them into whatever the future is, rather than letting things that we don't like happen and then we have to respond in some way. Children in our culture, for example, who are between 6 and 11 years of age are usually in one of the great times of life. But as we know, there are significant things that happen during that period of time, and we want our children to not be hurt by them and to benefit from them. So, for example, in this lesson, it is this. So for children of this age, we want to make sure that you find uniqueness and understand each child and individualize them. So we've got an interesting set of what seems like opposing forces at work. We want to create closeness and connections, but at the same time, we have to establish uniqueness or the understanding each child in a unique manner. It is often amazing to me as a clinician, as a person who works in a counseling way with parents and children, that quite often parents are communicating with their children in a way that serves the previous age or one that is supposed to come later, rather than just learn how to communicate and to talk to that one particular child of that particular age. Why do that? Why make this period of time one where you're focusing on uniqueness and build a strong family community? Well, you might wonder why I'm still giving focus to potential threats to children, but this is the age, like I mentioned, of a strange irony or paradox. We've had the privilege of teaching young people of today and I'm quite aware of how truly remarkable many of them are. My involvement with them suggests that many are advanced in some way above the previous generation. But at the same time, in my professional work, I am seeing healthy and remarkable children become successful adults. We are witnessing greater numbers of younger children whose lives have been altered by some harmful condition. I have discovered that there is a lot more pornography available for 10-year-olds, for example. Or children about this age start communicating about gender identity issues. But in my opinion, the most important thing is to realize that we should identify the threats to children of this age and make sure that we understand them, and then we're adapting our family so that we manage these threats well. So for instance, one of the great threats of our time is disinformation, sort of like brainwashing and indoctrination by schools or other activist institutions, while deceiving parents. And this may set young children against parents and distort the normal and healthy formation of identities. How about many parents who seek medical help for depressed and anxious children, hoping for a remedy, and receive the advice to medicate children at a very young age? I see so much of that, it's kind of frightening to me. There's an early introduction to sex and sexual behavior unless we're able to screen kids. And then there's a lot of information about sex and gender without adequate knowledge of self-restraint or self-protection. There are, for these kids, confusing ideologies presented in schools and, for example, in other places having to do with the internet. There is the use of electronics, which isolates children from their parents. And if the use is extensive, it can delay brain growth. Think of that. Researchers are now showing that excessive involvement with technology delays brain growth. And what that means is that children can be chronologically of one age, but prepared mentally for an earlier age because their brains haven't been able to grow along with the years. We also discover that excessive screen time and the blue light in them prevents production of melatonin and creates sleeplessness. Or how about the content of movies on the internet and in theaters, which present violence, mistreatment of people by others, and which shock the sensibilities of children so they develop an unrealistic view of people. It's amazing to me what I see. And I used to think, well, I can handle most things, but some of these things that kids are watching nowadays on TV are a little shocking. Here's another thing that I worry about. Today, there's a perception of reality as of divisiveness portrayed in social media, and the local news often mirrored in neighborhoods and families. So we're more likely to hear bad news or when people didn't cooperate or so on, quite often than we are able to hear the news when large churches or groups of people get together in order to benefit the victims of hurricanes or help needy people or something like that. We also see happening that in contact and involvement with peers of the kids these age who are more aggressive and controlling emotionally, sexually, or physically. It might be just because I'm a family psychologist who are dealing with this population, but it's surprising to me the number of young kids, 6 through 11, who have some difficulty, with other people. So there are many threats, many others that I've talked about. So now the question is, what is it we do during this period of time as parents which make it possible for our children to sail through this period of time, have successful development and growth in mental and emotional and physical and moral ways, and then help you feel confident that what you're doing is the right thing? So now here's the question we should start with. How do you protect your children and keep them free from fear and promote their growth also? I think part of the answer to this question is to establish and then reinforce the power of your family. A few parents who are overly strict and authoritarian, in my opinion, demand that children display loyalty to the family and motivate them by demands, excessive control, and fear of punishment. I'm not proposing that. I propose that parents make their family the most important point of reference for their children out of love, fun, religious faith, if that is your choice, shared relationship, and all sorts of combined activities. Well, why spend time doing this? Well, children refer to groups they hold membership in and belong to and attribute the qualities of these groups to themselves. I want to repeat that for emphasis. When children form groups, like even in the first grade, for example, the teacher will form a group of fast readers and call them the turtles. And so what do the turtles do? They go slow. And then they have another group that's called bluebirds, and that might be the slow readers. And so children acquire or attribute the characteristics of these groups to themselves. In a more advanced and terrible way, the Crips and the Bloods and the other people of these violent gangs see individuals in there attribute the same aggressiveness to themselves as is manifest by the group itself. Now this happens because they feel something for the group and or believe they will be enhanced by their membership. That is, they'll be better off, they'll be more popular, and so on. Now, part of each person's individual identity is made up of the roles they play in groups where they hold membership. Now, I'm proposing that you be selective about what your children participate in and make your children less vulnerable to external negative conditions. What that means is before your child becomes a member of any group, you check it out and make sure the group represents what's consistent with what you value. Now, if it's positive and constructive, making things happen is a good thing. But we can, because we're the parents, you're the parents, you can make your family the primary point of reference, and you can do so by giving your family, parents and all the children, a form of loyalty and commitment that reduces the vulnerability of children to these threats. And if you do that, then they will discover that they are better able to avoid the unfavorable influences and make better choices. Now, it takes energy and effort to generate positive feelings and create other conditions that invite children to commit themselves to their families. But I have seen so much evidence about it that it's worth it. It is shown in the satisfaction of parents whose children are growing up and out of the family, but on their own clearly show loyalty, love, and devotion to their families. They maintain their parents' values, often their religious faith, and so on. Well, how do you go about doing that? Well, hold family meetings to talk, have fun, and learn, and not just on vacations. Start having family meetings when your children are young, even before this age, and form a habit of doing that in a routine so that children come to enjoy and look forward to it. Then you have to make these family meetings meaningful and quite often fun. Now, if you begin now and you do so consistently when your children are teenagers, the pattern will have been set. Now, families gathering for meals appears to be a very good thing. Family vacations are also helpful. Celebrations or traditions seems also to be instrumental in creating a point of reference by each child for your family. In my work with families, I've discovered the following happens. The case study happened because these parents, were trying to create the situation where the children made their primary point of reference their family. Well, here's an example. Some parents whose children are healthy and successful adults in a positive way have largely avoided being influenced by harmful possibility of social media and other potential negative influences. So I talked to the parents so I could learn what they had done. Here's the father's story. He said that as parents they decided to have regular meals together as a family, and so decided that the evening meal was scheduled at 6 o'clock every day. He said it took quite a bit of effort to get kids to be pleasant to each other, but finally they succeeded. Then he said sometimes he couldn't make it, but he told his wife start dinner at 6, so they came to expect it. Then he told the rest of the story. He told one day how his children were arguing over a TV program, and as he walked by the TV room, he had a pair of pliers, or wire cutters, I guess, in his hand, and at the time he thought it's time to provide an object lesson. So he went over, cut the cord, and walked out of the room telling his children there was no TV program that was worth an argument between two of his children. Now, although he tended to hook up the wire soon after, and his wife decided to leave it off. And they did for several months. He smiled when he talked about it and said it was like having withdrawal symptoms for him. He said, I felt like when I went Monday night to go watch Monday Night Football, and I realized I couldn't go. I felt a little like somebody had been using drugs and was in a rehab center. He said it was so unusual that a local TV station came into their home and filmed an excerpt for one of their local programs. But he also said that they held family meetings, played games, did all sorts of things that they considered important. And they helped their children complete their work at home. And they talked about how the family is helped when the children do their chores and follow rules. At one family meeting, they invited a concert pianist who was a friend. She came and put on a performance for his children. On another occasion, he had a Spanish teacher come, and several nights so everyone could learn Spanish. After a year or so, they invited other people to come. On one occasion, he invited an artist. And this artist came with books filled with art by Rembrandt, Monet, and other impressionists. He said, I thought my kids would just be bored to tears. Instead, when he opened those books and started to tell them about these paintings, they climbed up on the table and started to look themselves. Now, the foregoing example illustrates some elements of family life that are available to every parent. That is, if you want to make your family the primary point of reference for your children. The parents agreed and worked together. They applied leadership to their family, and they used family time to teach their kids. 2, there were chores in the family, and the children each had some of their own. 3, the family had a few rules to guide everyone, like dinner at 6, but they were not oppressive. 4, the relationship between parents and children motivated the children to be willing to do what the parents suggested. And what that meant is the parents would say to a child, how important is our relationship to you? Let's sit down and talk when there's a problem. Let's not just run off and hide. This man said that he taught his kids to talk things through. And then they had a program in the family where the children were asked to learn and develop their talents. So here's what I am proposing. Engage family members in a fun activity and use it to create a warm relationship with them that provides leadership in the family, filled with love and warmth and a lot of communication. And do that regularly. It doesn't matter what it is, as a matter of fact. In my case, I've had a variety of activities because my wife and I had a variety of kids. Here's the second thing. Make sure you teach about sex and reproduction early to children and create a conversation relationship so that your children can feel safe talking to you. Next, teach your children how to say no when someone wants to touch them and that only parents and themselves are permitted to touch them. Love enough to set firm limits. Regulate the use of electronics and create family experiences instead. Involve and individualize children so that all are involved and can still use the benefits of the internet. When appropriate, spend time teaching your children about the potential threats that exist and how to protect themselves. Number 6, deal with conflicts early. Don't allow children to go on fighting. Stop them. Just stop them. Ask everybody to take a deep breath. Don't ask what started it. That's the worst question to ask. And then say, just tell me what's going on, and then help them find a solution that they can do by talking and visiting so they no longer have to fight. Fighting is not necessary in a home. Some families believe that teasing and fighting are the way family life is. Not so. It doesn't have to be that way. So you resolve rather than isolate your kids. Now, when dealing with children's mistakes or misbehavior, understand their motives. Ask them what caused this, what brought this about, and their emotions before you impose any judgment. It's just like, tell me what you were thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. Oh, I can see why you did that. Then talk about what is the very best thing to do. Please understand that your children may be motivated by an unmet need. It might be part of their natural development. It might be because some other experience they're having in life. Learn how to build your children from inside out, not outside in. 8, develop a pattern of communicating with each child on a semi-regular basis and increase those times when children face a new challenge. Maybe I am more nervous than I should be, but having seen what I've seen, I just think a regular conversation with each of your children would solve a lot of problems if it was fun and worthwhile and enjoyable. And last, involve yourself and teach your children to do things with each other in order to create a sense of community. It is important for us to do the things that will bring our children together with us as parents, and then for us to communicate a lot with our kids, to keep track of their lives and to make sure that our children know we know them, and to also do things that we can find uniqueness, learn how to help our children join and be with the family, and give our family like a family name or a family motto, family goals, and work at it a little bit until our children aged 6 through 11 have their family as a point of reference. So they talk with you, they see their family as somebody's important, and they're going to live according to the values of the family. That typically is the very best way to help children pass through 6 through 11, learning, growing, and developing, and avoiding the threats that are available to them.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Do What Matters Most, which is sponsored by firstanswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Visit firstanswers.com to sign up for a free newsletter. Find Do What Matters Most on Facebook and our website, mattersmostmedia.org, where you can ask Dr. Scoresby your own questions. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the podcast app or Google Podcasts and let us know what you think about Do What Matters Most.